What is new? How are audiences reacting? And what do they want to watch?
Yeah, I think the thing that's been the most interesting over the last 24 months is really the continued fragmentation of over-the-top and connected TV. So 2 or 3 years ago, Roku had really all the dominant market share in terms of people streaming, in terms of devices, and then providers like Hulu had the lion's share of the audience for ad-supported. And now what you're seeing with the TV Everywhere apps from all of the traditional cable and broadcast companies, as well as traditional digital players like Condé Nast, you're seeing much more competition for the streaming audience.
So, Lucas, how did that play out at the NewFronts in terms of how presentations were, essentially presented?
Yeah, it means that people are more focused on the shows, I think, and less on the trends. There's sort of an acceptance that cord cutting has happened, and audiences and advertisers want to be online, and it's really who can provide the best content to pair with. So Disney will bring out Mickey Mouse, show a teaser of Wreck-It Ralph 2. YouTube will talk about its original shows and all the stars on its platform, and on down the line, Twitter announced something like 30 or 40 different partnerships on Monday. And so it's who can convince the advertisers that whatever they're selling, we have this kind of phrase of too much TV and traditional TV.
Right, it's the golden age of TV, and yet there's also a question, are we in a TV bubble? There are so many shows, and I don't know who has time to watch them all.
I don't.
Exactly. Well, so is the definition of a hit changing then? Do you need to have as big of an audience, or is the audience itself becoming more fragmented when you consider each show and not just the platform it's being watched on?
Yeah, so more and more advertising is going to audience-based advertising. So traditionally it was, I hope that my audience likes a certain type of show, so I'll just look for that type of show and assume based off some sort of Nielsen rating that the audience is live. I think across over-the-top and connected TV, there's more of an expectation of actually knowing the audience, not just only the age and gender, but also, do they drive a luxury vehicle? Are they in market for international travel? And so the content is really becoming a proxy to go out and get that audience. So if you have a very coveted audience, you don't have to have a large amount of viewers to be able to really monetize that content.
Are you seeing anything, given the extra data that you have, that conflicts with what we see with Nielsen, with the Nielsen rating?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, there's a ton of evidence that what correlates well on linear television often is not the most popular content on connected TV. I think partly that has to do with the on-demand nature. People can watch whatever they want, whenever they want to watch it, as opposed to still the bulk of linear television is watched live. There seems to be more of an affinity to more episodic, longer content on OTT than even on linear. And so, yes, a strategy has to be very focused on the screen that people watch it on, because the behavior is not always the same across different platforms.
So, Lucas, how is this changing the kinds of deals that are getting done and how they're getting done?
Well, the kinds of deals are different just in that everybody wants to own all of their shows. So it used to be that in TV, if you were a big producer, you would sell a show and keep what's called back end, and you could make millions of dollars when that show gets syndicated and reruns and so on and so forth. A company like Netflix now buys out all those rights at the beginning. So you get kind of an estimated back end, but you don't have that crazy upside if you're a TV producer that you used to. And now most people are trying to copy that, because it used to be that studios would sell to other networks. And over time we've seen, not just online, but in traditional TV networks too, people selling to themselves and wanting to control from beginning to end, because it allows them to do what they want online or better compete with Netflix.
So what does it mean for advertising and advertisers?
So I think the opportunity for advertisers is actually better than it's ever been. There's more screens and more opportunity to reach audiences than ever before. I think, though, it does mean that advertisers need to be smart. I think one of the things that the industry needs to be very careful of, and I say this in a nice way, is to not dumb down connected TV into kind of the old TV standards. And
I do see some things sometimes, and I'm like, who's watching this?
Yeah.
Who's the audience?
Yeah, and I think it's really being able to leverage the data to better have more of a personalized strategy in terms of the content and make things available to the right people, as opposed to just assuming that because this worked 20 years ago on linear television, we'll just keep doing that.
So, Lucas, are people making more money or less?
I think it's concentrated. Netflix is making, a lot of revenue, no profit. YouTube is making a lot of revenue, no profit. All the traditional guys, their revenue is sort of precarious. It's still there, but they're under pressure. I think that if you're a big-time producer, if you're Ryan Murphy, Shonda Rhimes, you're still making a ton of money. If you are a mid-level producer, there are probably more opportunities available to you than ever before. So more shows being made is probably good if you're a creative person. If you're an investor, you got to make the right picks.
And for these, so we were speaking about Hulu earlier, which maybe has less of a lion's share of the pie when it comes to viewing, but they do have this huge hit, A Handmaid's Tale. Are these, networks going to be, is it make or break depending on whether you have a hit or not?
I think Netflix has shown that they have a very different strategy because a lot of the content, same thing with Handmaid's Tale, a lot of the shows that are winning the awards, the Emmys, aren't actually the most viewed shows on these platforms. So I think that's one thing that we need to be careful of. Sometimes a hit can be a show that wins no awards and a lot of people haven't heard of, but there's 3 million 18 to 25-year-old males out there that will watch it for 7 hours straight.
Almost nobody watched Mad Men. It was really popular in Los Angeles and New York. It won all the critics awards, but it wasn't one of the most watched shows, whereas The Walking Dead, same network, most watched show on TV, but it doesn't win any awards.
Exactly. So I think there's definitely a mix of that. The other thing I would say in terms of how money's being made, it's just not as concentrated. Before it was whoever had the highest Nielsen ratings is making tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. I think because there's so much content and there's so many distribution points, that revenue is actually much more spread out. There's a lot of over-the-top platforms like Pluto TV and Zumo and others that a lot of people have never heard of that have millions and millions and millions of viewers on a daily basis. And so I think that's something that's going to be interesting to watch.
So is this fragmentation sustainable, or will there be consolidation? Will there be M&A?
I mean, we're already seeing consolidation. Disney's trying to buy Fox. Comcast is in there somewhere. CBS and Viacom are probably getting back together. All the traditional guys feel like they need scale because they're trying to compete with the big tech companies. And so you're seeing consolidation there. And most of these digital media companies, we've had lots of cycles of digital media companies that achieved high valuations. Turns out the business wasn't that great, and either they fail or they get gobbled up or they end up getting pushed together. I think the same will happen with some of the companies that Andre was talking about.
So we asked this earlier when we were talking about music streaming, but in 5 years, where do you see this business? Where do you see the content business?
So I don't even think it's going to take 5 years. I think in the next 30 to 36 months, we won't even call it connected TV or cord cutting or streaming because it'll be the majority of television consumption will happen that way. I stream Bloomberg all the time, right? So
Thank you.
So it's not just for on-demand content, or it's also live content, sporting news. Everything is kind of shifting to a new distribution pattern, and so I think it's going to just change the entire way we think of television and monetization.
I think it'll still be pretty fragmented because think 5 years from now, Disney's just going to introduce its own Disney-branded streaming service in 2 years. It'll take, over the next 3 years of its existence, it'll sign up some subscribers, but you're going to have it very balkanized between the direct digital plays, Netflix, Disney's direct-to-consumer, et cetera, and the different bundles that are offered online, because you have people trying to kind of keep their money growing in lots of different ways, given that the traditional model is under threat.